Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, the madness continues. We are in the second weekend of the NCAA Tournament, and we are going to be breaking down the Friday Sweet 16 slate. That's right, we're going to take a look at all four games, tell you what you can expect from each game, as well as who needs to be in or out of your DFS lineups, as well as some stats and info that you're going to need to know if you plan on making any player props or parlays for these four games. And y'all, I got to be honest, I really think that this is going to be a great weekend. I truly think that the second weekend of the NCAA tournament is really where the basketball itself peaks. And I think that this one's going to be a particularly good weekend because, even though we don't have the Cinderellas, even though we don't have the mid-majors, all of these teams that are left are really good basketball teams. And a lot of them played really entertaining basketball as well. So we should see some chess matches. We should see some great shooting nights. We should just see a whole lot of great basketball this weekend. And I'm really excited about it. And I hope you guys are as well. And I'm recording this here on Thursday night, at about a little past halftime of the BYU Alabama game. And, that game delivered so far. The Maryland-Florida game has delivered so far. So let's hope that these games can continue to deliver. And let's hope that they can continue to deliver for the rest of the NCAA tournament because we're going to be here breaking down the rest of the NCAA tournament. So if you have not subscribed already, please help me out. Make sure you have subscribed. We are at over 950 subscribers now. We are closing in on our goal of 1,000, but we can only get there if you guys hit the subscribe button. And to help me out, if these videos have helped you out in any way, please hit the like button on YouTube and rate and review if you're listening on audio and comment if you're watching on YouTube. All of that helps the videos and the podcast show up in searches, which helps more people find the show, which helps grow the community, which helps get that number of subscribers closer to 1K, which is our goal. But anyway, we got four awesome games to break down. So let's go ahead and dive right in.
All right, so game number one is one that I could truly see going both ways. Like, to me, this is the hardest game of the entire Sweet 16 to predict. I could just see any range of outcomes here in this one. It is Michigan State taking on Ole Miss in Atlanta. So slight home court advantage to Ole Miss, I would say. KenPom has this one as Michigan State 73-70. That is a game total of 143 points, which ranks third out of the four games on the slate. And the reason why is that both these teams are both good offensively and defensively. They both rank in the top 25 of both offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency. This game will be played at a solid tempo. Ole Miss ranks 131st. Michigan State ranks 170th. But this is just a total contrast of styles with two teams that, you could just tell me that anything happens in this game and I believe it, right? So Ole Miss is a very short team. They rank 327th in effective height. They are the shortest team remaining in the tournament, which in turn makes them a very poor rebounding team. Now, what that causes them to do is they play the patented Chris Beard no middle defense, where they force opponents to take a lot of threes. They try not to let opponents get to the rim because there's very little protection when they actually get there, right? And Michigan State is a team that is terrible at shooting the three-point shot. They rank 321st in the nation from three. But also, on the flip side, they don't take a whole lot of them, and they are the best three-point defense in the entire nation. And Ole Miss has been on a shooting, they have been shooting just incredible in this NCAA tournament. They've been over 40% from three in both NCAA tournament games. And if they were not as on fire from threes they have been, they would have been bounced by North Carolina in round one and then by Iowa State in round two. So the question is, does Ole Miss see some shooting regression in this one? Probably, but is Michigan State going to be able to take advantage on the other side? Well, from an individual perspective, how can we look at that? Well, Ole Miss's best player in this NCAA tournament has been Sean Padula. It hasn't even been close. He has been just their go-to guy, that the guy that runs the offense, huge usage rates, 20 points in both games, 37.5 and 43.5 DraftKings points in those two games. As long as he stays out of foul trouble, and I can't think of a reason why he would get in foul trouble in this game, he should absolutely be in a position to smash again. The only concern would be, if Michigan State does limit the catch and shoot threes from the other Rebels, does that eat into Padula's assists? I think there's a chance that could happen, but because he still has the ball in his hands so much, I still have pretty good amount of confidence in him to get you 35 DraftKings points at a salary of $8,200. I think he's a great survivor or cash game play if you're still playing those. Now, Malik Dia is the big wild card in this game. So he is Ole Miss's best big. He's like their only big. He's only 6'9", but he's really athletic. He can space the floor, and he can really slash the rim too. He can cause problems for a team center if he stays out of foul trouble. If he gets in foul trouble and he doesn't play max minutes like against UNC, he only puts up 15 DraftKings points. When he stays on the floor, he's very effective. Like against Iowa State, when he played 26 minutes, put up 34 DraftKings points. Like against Auburn, when he played 30 minutes, put up 26 DraftKings points. As long as he can stay out of foul trouble, he is a pretty good bet to give you a lot of fantasy points. Right? I really do like Malik Dia here on this slate, but you have to, understand that he is a GPP type of play with a wide range of outcomes, not some lock and load cash type of play. Now, after those two, I got to say, I really just don't have as much interest in these Ole Miss guys. Like Jalen Murray has been pretty good. in the NCAA tournament, but he's at $5,700 on DraftKings. That's just overpriced for what his role has been in the NCAA tournament since the team has gone more heavy to Sean Padula on the ball. Matthew Morrell's kind of the same way. The good news is with Murray and Morrell, though, is they're both playing all of the minutes. Morrell gives you a little more in terms of peripheral stats. He's been at 24 and 25 DraftKings points each of the first 2 games. I think Morrell is a pretty solid cash game play, or pretty solid high floor value play because of how many minutes he plays and the fact that he can get you peripheral stats so that even if Padula is operating on the ball, he can still get you some stuff. Jamin Brakefield is their big that comes off the bench. I would not recommend playing Brakefield and Dia in the same lineup. I think they kind of inhibit each other's upside. More and more lately, they've also been playing Brakefield at the 4 when Dia has been on the floor and staying out of foul trouble. So, there's a chance that they could play together, but they're still competing for the same rebounds and the same touches offensively. So I wouldn't put both of them in the same DraftKings lineup. But Brakefield's been really good in this NCAA tournament from a draft perspective. He's only $5,000. He's been over 21 DraftKings points in both the first 2 games. I don't mind him as a value play at $5,000. Dre Davis has just been okay in the NCAA tournament. He was great against North Carolina, but they had no rim protector and he could just slash his way to the rim. Against Iowa State, did not have that amount of success. Michigan State does have rim protection for what it's worth. So I don't think that this is the best spot for Davis. Now, Michigan State, the question is A, are they going to be able to hit their 3-pointers? And B, are they going to be able to take advantage of their size mismatch? So to me, that's the entire prism of which I'm viewing this Michigan State team as those 2 things. So here's who I like. Richardson is their best shooter. Now, granted, he hasn't shot well in this NCAA tournament, which just means that he's probably due for some positive regression. But he's also a guy now that he's playing 30 minutes a game. He's getting you a lot of peripheral stats. He's operating on the ball quite a bit. I like him quite a good deal at 6,900 as the guy that could, make 5 threes in this game. The other guy that could take and make threes is Jaden Akins, but he does not give you as much with the peripheral stats as Jace Richardson does, so I'm kind of out on him. I'd rather just pay up for Richardson. And then Trey Holloman is their other shooter. He's kind of just good for 5 3-point attempts a game, and if he makes 3 of them, he's going to have a even fantasy. He can also operate on the ball and get you some assists and some steals as well. I don't mind him as a value play at $5,500. I think compared to the Ole Miss value plays, I would probably rather play Holloman because I think schematically it makes more sense that Holloman's going to get to those 3-pointers, whereas opposed to those Ole Miss guys, you're pretty confident that Purdue is going to be operating on the ball. Now, what that leaves is from the guard spot, I'm not as interested in Jeremy Fears. Jeremy Fears is a guy that I like to target in pace up, peripheral stat type of games because he's not a scorer. He's just not a scorer offensively. He's not looking for his own shot, not going to take in. So I'm just not interested in him in this type of game at 4,900. For the forwards, though, they still do this weird forward rotation, man. It's just really hard to know what Izzo's going to do on a night in, night out basis. Simone Zapala starts at center. I hope I pronounced that correctly. But literally, if you watch the games, he starts and he comes out and he doesn't play again until halftime. And then he starts the second half and he comes right back out. It's so weird. I don't know why he starts. If you think that there's a chance that he could go nuclear in the first 5 minutes of the game at only $3,300, he doesn't have to give you a whole lot. I think there's worse punt plays in the history of punt plays in DFS, but it's really hard to feel good about. Jackson Kohler starts at the 4 with Zapala and then plays a lot at the 5, but he hasn't been playing as many minutes recently. Well, it's just been weird, but he's the perfect type of nominee to take advantage of Ole Miss's lack of height and rim protection because he is a really good post-up big man, and he can also space the floor a little bit with his 3-point shot. I really do think this is a dream matchup for Jackson Kohler if Izzo will just give him the minutes. So the question is are you going to play him as kind of a leap of faith and hope that Izzo gives him the minutes? Or are you going to fade him because you just have no confidence in the minutes, right? I think he's not a cash game play. I think he's a great GPP play. After those two are the starters. Cohen Carr has been great recently. He's kind of an undersized, slashing type of 4. To me, he's a guy that could match up with Brakefield and Dia on the other end. He's the perfect foil for both of them. The question is he going to continue to see the minutes, which he has in this NCAA tournament so far? And if he does continue to see the minutes, he is a pretty good bet to get you 4x value. $100, but we just don't know what Izzo's going to do with minutes. Off the bench, Izzo will also play Carson Cooper. He's another post-up big. If you were listening to what I said about Jackson Kohler and you thought that makes a lot of sense, well, then Carson Cooper, everything applies to him as well. He's not as good as Kohler in my opinion, but he consistently plays north of 17 minutes and he gets a lot of boards while he's out there. His rebound rates are outstanding. He's not as good of a post-up big, but if he's going to go in there and get you some boards, block a few shots, he doesn't need a lot to hit value at $3,900. And then Frankie Fiddler is kind of their stretch four off the bench, just not super consistent. He's kind of in the spot where, if you think he could go nuclear in the 10 minutes that he plays, then you might be worth a look at 3,300. But it's hard to give you guys a good sell of confidence in a guy like that with that profile. All right, let's move on to game number 2. It's going to be Tennessee versus Kentucky. This should be a fun one, honestly. Now, I love how DraftKings, they have the little dome icon because this game's being played in Lucas Oil Stadium. And I think that's intended for NFL games, but hey, whatever. Historically speaking, domes do not see as good of shooting percentages as normal basketball arenas. If I were making the rules at the NCAA, this is one of the changes I would make is I wouldn't play basketball games in football stadiums. Basketball games deserve to be played in basketball arenas where every fan can see, where every player has their normal sight lines. If you have not been around basketball a lot, like sight lines really affect shooters, and it's really hard in a dome. It's also really hard. Like we play in a lot of high school gyms for the high school that I coach at, where there's just like nothing on the walls. And that can mess with guys too. And it's kind of the same way in a dome, right? Where you're just staring into like blankness, as opposed to like when you have, things on the walls, landmarks that you can use to kind of get your bearings of sight. It just makes it easier. But Lucas Oil is actually, the domes is a pretty good one. NRG Stadium for Houston is the worst, for the record. Anyway, I digress. KenPom has this game projected to be 76-72 in favor of Tennessee. That is a 148-point game total, which ranks second on the slate. This is a rematch. These two teams have played twice so far this season. Kentucky literally won both times, the 78-73 and 75-64. I will spare you like looking at the box score. Kentucky shot lights out from 3 in both games. They shot over 50%, and Tennessee was miserable in both games from 3, and they took a lot of them. So, like, if you just are a general believer in regression to the mean, or like just, sometimes basketball is a maker in a sport, then you would probably side on Tennessee having a better performance here in this game. And the stats kind of bear that out, right? When you look at what these two teams have done over the course of the year offensively, Kentucky ranks 11th in offensive efficiency. Tennessee is 17th. They did not play like the 17th best offense in the nation both the times they played Kentucky. Kentucky's 46th defensive efficiency, but that's actually been better lately with Jackson Robinson out of the lineup. Tennessee's been stout defensively all year long, but they rank 3rd in defensive efficiency. And Kentucky, they're going to be huge up for Tennessee. Whoever controls the tempo of this game is going to determine where the total is going to go. Kentucky ranks 26th. Tennessee ranks 346th in tempo in the nation. All right, so let's talk about this Kentucky side. So with them having the injuries to Jackson Robinson and everybody else, like they've shortened their rotation a little bit, but their bench guys are getting a lot better with the minutes that they've played. It's almost like when a guy plays more basketball, they get better at basketball. But anyway, in terms of their guys from a DraftKings perspective, Amari Williams is up here $8,400. He has had dream matchups in the first 2 games of the NCAA tournament. This is not a dream matchup. Tennessee is probably going to beat them on the boards. A really good rim protecting team. And you look at the 2 games against Tennessee that they have played, Amari Williams had 13 and 34 DraftKings points. So the 34 would be okay. 13 would not. But Mark Pope is pretty much also committed to he's not playing Amari Williams more than 25 minutes in a game unless he has to. So you're looking at not max minutes against a great defense. It's a bad matchup for him. I'm out on Amari Williams. In terms of the other forwards, Andrew Carr is a guy that I do think could do some good things for Kentucky in this game. He is a stretch 4. He's also turning into a better defender. He was kind of a defensive liability when he was at Wake Forest. And he's been pretty consistently good from a DraftKings perspective. He was not good in the Illinois game, but it was just due to him missing shots. Like if he hits a few more shots, he gets the 28 DraftKings points in that game. I feel decent going back to Carr because I think that his ability to space the floor could help score against this Tennessee defense. And then Brandon Garrison is pretty much going to play all the minutes at the 5 that Amari Williams does not. I think Garrison's a very solid punt GPP play at $3,600 because if you get Amari Williams foul trouble and Garrison plays 20 minutes, he could explode for like 25 DraftKings points because he is a great fantasy points per minute player. He just doesn't always play a whole lot of minutes, and he himself get in foul trouble. So I think he's a pretty solid GPP play. I think if you're like me and you're doing a 20 minutes, you're playing more lineups than that, then I think he should be in your player pool. But it's hard for me to try to sell you guys on him being a core play when he does have that volatile profile. Now, let's talk about the guards. So Otega Owe has been the lead dog among the Kentucky guards since Jackson Robinson got hurt. Now, it's been very feast or famine with him, right? Like you oscillate pretty much between 40 and 15 DraftKings points every time. Illinois was the first one that was Kobe, if you were not familiar with Kobe Bryant from his time at Dayton, he's one of the best shooters in the nation. He's an elite catch and shoot player. He's also expanded his game to do it more off the dribble. He's expanded his game to be a big time defender, and he's just solid, right? Like I think if you're playing cash games, I do think 7,400 is a little expensive for him, but I think he's a solid play because of how many minutes he's going to play, because he's so good as a two-way player now. He's going to play all the minutes. He can get you boards. He can get you some assists every now and then, and if he hits his threes, then you're going to be a happy camper with Kobe Bryant. He's another guy kind of like Otega Owe, where I'm not recommending him as a core player or anything, but he's a guy that's going to be in my player pool for sure. Lamont Butler. So I kind of had like a little bit of a rant against Lamont Butler before the Illinois game, and then he goes out and just totally makes me look like an idiot with 30 DraftKings points. So like I don't like messing with guys with shoulder injuries, because the shoulder is something that it affects your shot. It can randomly pop out, or like you take a bump the wrong way or something, and you're going to be done. And so that's a risk that you take anytime you play Lamont Butler. But he looked pretty doggone good in that Illinois game. He looked back to being Lamont Butler. So the question is, if he can continue that, you can expect another 30 DraftKings points out of him. But if the shoulder goes bad, and he could leave the game, he could not make any of his shots. Like, you don't really know what to expect. Super wide range of outcomes. He's another guy that, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but, playing a 20 max, I think he should be in your player pool, but I don't think he should be a core play. Colin Chandler and Trent Noah play a little bit off the bench, but I don't think they do enough to kind of warrant playing at their salary in a matchup against Tennessee, because Tennessee is not going to give you as much as Troy and Illinois did. All right, now on the Tennessee side. So Tennessee in their offense has kind of totally overhauled what they do. They've pretty much just decided, you know what, we're going to play through our two guards once we get to postseason play. And that's exactly what they've done. Ziegler and Lanier have been the lead guys. Now, for this specific game, I am going to be more of a Ziegler guy than a Lanier guy. And the reason why is because Ziegler is much better at picking up peripheral stats. And with Kentucky being a big-time pace-up for Tennessee, I would rather have the guy that's more likely to get the peripheral stats than the guy that's going to be the flamethrower scorer. And the stats kind of bear that out with with Ziegler. He's had a very high floor over the last 5 games. He hasn't been under 32 DraftKings points. And I just think that he's a really solid play, right? Because of what he can do with those peripherals. And so I am going to be in on Ziegler, $8,600. I'm probably going to have a little bit of Lanier, but a little bit less of him at $8,000. It's a really... like, he's such a good scorer, but it's so much to ask of a guy that is probably going to get you 6 or 7 maximum rebounds or assists to hit value at $8,000 salary on DraftKings. Like, you're going to need him to drop 25, which he can do, but it's just a tough ask, right? And when you look at the previous games against Kentucky, 19 DraftKings points, 23 DraftKings points. He scored 15, he scored 10. Is part of that due to poor shooting? Yes, he shot a combined 3 for 17 from 3 in those 2 games. But he got 4 and 7 rebounds plus assists in both of those games. That's not going to cut it at $8,000 on DraftKings. So, he's a guy that I do think can be in your player pool, but I'm probably going to be under the field on Chaz Lanier because I would rather have a guy that's going to get me more peripherals. Speaking of which, Jordan Gainey has been really good off the bench for this Tennessee team. He's kind of been playing more and more minutes recently, and I don't think it can be understated how well he's played and how good he's looked, but he's way too expensive on DraftKings. Like, I can't endorse playing him at $6,500 when his last 5 games have only been 1 game over 22 DraftKings points. Like I tip the cap, Jordan Gainey. You're playing good basketball. I respect it. Not for me in DraftKings at that salary. Maybe on FanDuel at his salary. Maybe on FanDuel. Now, Jemai Mashak, last guard that I'll mention, he is their defensive stopper. He is probably going to be put on Otega Owe in this game. If he stays out of foul trouble, he can rack up a lot of stats in a hurry. If he gets in foul trouble, because he's usually guarding the other team's best player, he usually doesn't give you a whole lot. I think he's kind of a game stacky type of value play, in my personal opinion. After that, let's talk about the forwards. So Okpara is kind of like more of the like rim protector, like dunker spot offensively guy. Like, they're not going to get him the ball in low post situations. They're not going to feature him offensively, but he can get you some block shots. He can get you some rebounds. I would rather play Igor Milicic. I think Igor Milicic is a lot more versatile statistically in what he can do. Igor Milicic is also due to have a game where he doesn't get in foul trouble. And I think that Igor can do a lot, and I think he's going to have the better matchup in this game. You look at the previous 2 Kentucky games, Igor Milicic, 33 and 38 DraftKings points. That's pretty substantial. So I do think that this could be a good Igor Milicic game. I am certainly going to be playing a lot of Igor Milicic in this game. All right, that does it for the first 2 games. Let's take a quick breather, and then we're going to break down the next 2. Now, before we get to game number 3, I do want to mention there are places where you can get more information from me. First off, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike's Money Picks. I'm more than happy to answer any questions if you reach out to me. And it's also where I tweet out all updates for the show as well. I'm also in the Fantasy Corner Discord. Y'all, I cannot speak more highly about the Discord. Basically, is a community of a bunch of really good and really smart people who play DFS for a lot of different sports. I'm talking college basketball, NBA, MLB, NFL, college football, golf, anything that's in season, right? And we're just in there all day talking strategy, talking plays, kind of bouncing ideas off each other. There's a lot of people who are really in tune with injury news. And then once the games start, we're just sweating it out together, talking it up, having a good time as well. It's just a great community to be a part of. And if you're looking for people to talk DFS with, I cannot recommend it enough. Also, if you want to know who actually makes all of my DFS lineups, head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/Mike's Money Picks. I tweet out or post, I should say, an article with my core plays for every single college basketball DFS slate. So you not only know who is in my lineups, but why they're in my lineups as well. All right, let's go ahead now talk about game number 3. I think this is going to be a pretty interesting one. All right, we've got Auburn taking on Michigan. Ken Palm has it is Auburn 80-72. That is a 152-point total, which is first among the 4 games on the slate. Now, if you're not familiar with the geography of the southern United States, Auburn, Alabama is only like an hour and 30-minute drive from Atlanta. Right? Like Atlanta is like really in the middle of Georgia. And if you just hop on I-65, you're going to get to Auburn just past the state line in about 90 minutes. Like there's going to be a packed house in favor of Auburn. And I think that's going to matter in this game, right? So, from a statistical perspective, ignoring the home field advantage, right? You've got 2 really good basketball teams. Shocker, right? Michigan's 39th in offensive efficiency. Auburn is 3rd. Michigan is 13th in defensive efficiency. Auburn is 2nd. Michigan ranks 58th in tempo. Auburn ranks 146th. Overall, this is a game that's going to be played at a pretty good pace between 2 pretty good basketball teams. The one thing with Michigan is I kind of view this game like if you think about rock, paper, scissors, right? Like paper beats rock, rock beats scissors, scissors beat paper. It's a cycle, right? So Texas A&M was kind of like the paper to Michigan's scissors, right? Like Texas A&M was a team that did not have a lot of height, but was really good at rebounding. And Michigan, with their height, was able to take away Texas A&M's advantage on the boards and just batter them in the second half, right? Auburn's kind of like the rock to Michigan's scissors, though. Auburn is a team that is going to be pretty equal to Michigan in terms of size, right? They're going to take away Michigan's size advantage. They're going to be equal or better with Michigan on the boards. And I think Auburn has better guard play than Michigan, which I think what's going to be the telling story of this game, right? So now let's talk about it from a DFS perspective. Oh, also Michigan, team that turns the ball over a ton. We heard that a lot in the last 2 weeks, partly from me. And Auburn's a team that likes to turn teams over. So I just think this is a bad matchup for Michigan. Let's talk about it from a DFS perspective. Michigan does have the twin towers of Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden. They're great. Like they're just really good. They run, the big pick and roll. I don't think they're going to be as effective at doing that against Auburn with Auburn's front court. But Danny Wolf is still up here at $9,000. I am probably going to be fading him here on this slate. I just don't really have a whole lot of faith in him to have a whole lot of effectiveness against this Auburn front court. I don't know. And then Vlad Golden, you got Vlad Golden a little bit cheaper, but problem with Vlad Golden is he's due to get in foul trouble, right? Vlad Golden can get himself in foul trouble, and I think this is a game it's going to happen for him. Whether they got him guarding Cardwell or Broom, I just see it happening where you're not going to get max minutes out of Vlad Golden. So I think that Vlad Golden is kind of a risky but high upside play, $8,800. He's got 2 games over 40 in his last 5, so there is some upside there. But I just like centers haven't been all that good against Auburn this year, and I would tend to think that that's going to continue to happen. Oh, and for what it's worth, Danny Wolf also played against Auburn in the NCAA tournament last year when he was at Yale. Only put up 13, 5, and 3. It's not great. Not going to pay off $9,000 on DraftKings. From a guard spot, you do have an interesting narrative here. It's a revenge game for Trey Donaldson. He is a former Auburn Tiger. He has had a very, very high floor in his last 5 games, at least 21 DraftKings points in all of them, putting up a ton of peripheral stats. And this is a pace-up game. Not a pace-up game, but this is a pretty solid pace game for Michigan. So I kind of don't mind Donaldson at $6,800. I think he's a little pricey, but you got the revenge narrative. You got that it's going to be at a good tempo. He's going to play max minutes. I don't mind it, especially considering that if you tend to think like I do, if Auburn is limiting the bigs, they're going to have to get some scoring from their guards, and Trey Donaldson could be a guy that could do that. Roddy Gale could also be a guy that could do that. He exploded for a 36 DraftKings point game against Texas A&M. We kind of called it on the Saturday show last week. Like, I wouldn't say I totally called it because I had some reservations, but in terms of thinking about how they could win that game and how Roddy Gale could play into it, we were right about that. And I think that this could be another Roddy Gale game. They're going to need scoring from their guards, and Roddy Gale is their guard that can really go out and score. He was Ohio State's second best player last year, arguably, and he's a guy that can just go get a bucket. And I think that at $4,400, obviously it feels a little bit like chasing the 36, but if he just gets you 18 or 19, you're going to feel pretty good about that. And so I do think that Roddy Gale is a pretty solid value play at 4,400. Now, what we also saw was Namari Burnett basically got phased out of that game. He only played 13 minutes against Texas A&M, only played 25 minutes against UC San Diego. Some of those minutes have been, in part for Roddy Gale, kind of expanding his role, but also the defensive stopper Reuben Jones has been playing a ton of minutes. And you've also had some quality minutes from LJ Kason last week as well. Played 20 minutes against Texas A&M, put up 18 DraftKings points. So the question is Namari Burnett going to be able to return to kind of his self of old, or are we going to see more Gale, Jones, and Kason? I would tend to think that for what this team needs, which is scoring, you're going to see a lot of Gale and maybe even a little bit of Kason. Now, the bigs for Michigan, we already talked about Wolf and Golden. Their one backup is Will Shetter. He is a stretch forward that is going to pretty much play a lot if Wolf or Golden gets in foul trouble. And to me, he could make a difference in this game because he absolutely could stretch those Auburn bigs away from the basket, which is what he did against Wisconsin in the Big Ten title game. Played 27 minutes, put up 20 DraftKings points. I think he's another guy that should be in your GPP player pool as kind of like a value punt type of play. Now on the Auburn side, so I'm never going to advocate for full fade in Janai Broome, right? But it hasn't been good lately. It has not been good at all lately. Last 3 games, 36 DraftKings points or less. Has not been great. And I think that this one against Wolf and Golden, as much as I said that, Auburn's a bad matchup for Michigan, you could argue that the Michigan bigs are a bad matchup for Auburn's too. I just don't really see him having that big of a game against them. And you look at his best games in his game log, it's against the Ole Misses of the world that are kind of smaller in the front court. Bama and Georgia are, they don't really play super big, powerful power forwards. So his best games are all coming against kind of the smaller type of teams. This is not a smaller team. So he's going to make my player pool because he's Janai Broome. He can break the slate anytime he's on it, but he's not going to be a big part of it because I just don't really like Janai Broome going up against bigger front courts. Chad Baker-Mazara was playing great for Auburn until he got hurt against Creighton, and then it kind of came to an abrupt end, but he doesn't give you a whole lot of peripheral stats. So I'm not a big-time advocate for Chad Baker-Mazara. But what I will point out is this. The reason that Baker-Mazara and Pettiford and Denver Jones all played really well against Creighton was because Creighton was running drop coverage on screens. They were letting Kalkbrenner sit underneath the rim, and they were letting the guards for Auburn kind of do what they wanted to off the pick and roll. And that really worked for Mazara. It really, really worked for Pettiford, and it really worked for Denver Jones. And I think that you could see a lot of that same type of strategy for Michigan with their 2 bigs, right? And so I think that you could see another good game from the Auburn guards. And so Todd Pettiford and Denver Jones are going to be 2 guys that I'm going to be playing a good bit of in this one. Probably not in the same lineup, but probably playing a good bit of in this one because of the fact that I expect Auburn to see drop coverage again. Miles Kelly is kind of not a beneficiary of that drop coverage. He's kind of been turned into just a catch and shoot player. And when he's hitting, you're happy. When he's not hitting, you're not getting a whole lot because he's not giving you a whole lot of peripheral stats. And he's not giving you a whole lot outside of catch and shoot threes. Dylan Cardwell is the starting center. He can be prone to foul trouble at times, but I'm not going to lie, y'all. $4,300 for Dylan Cardwell is cheap, especially when you look at what he's done over the last 5 games. Last 6 games, I would even say. He's been over 17 DraftKings points in 5 of 6. That's pretty good. And this is a game where they're going to need his size. They're going to need him to be down low. So I kind of like the idea of playing him at $4,300. Chaney Johnson is kind of the backup big. He will come in and play the 4 and let Broome play the 5. He's been really good in the NCAA tournament, over 20 DraftKings points in both those games. I don't mind the idea of getting to him at $4,200 either. I think that the cheap Auburn bigs in this game could give you something pretty good from a DraftKings perspective. All right, now we're going to talk about the last game of the night, which I got to say, I think you could full fade this game and be none the wiser. This is by far the worst game on the slate from a DraftKings perspective. And it's not even close. It's Houston versus Purdue. KenPom has this one as Houston 71-64. That is a game total of 135 points. And y'all, I think that this is going to be just not close. I just don't see Purdue scoring a whole lot against Houston. And here's this disco reason why, right? Purdue's a good offensive team. They're ranked 7th in the nation in offensive efficiency, 55th on defense, but they're 341st in two-point field goal defense, and 299th in tempo. Purdue, in games where they know they're not the more talented team, they understand the math behind number of possessions, and they will play really slow. They're not the better team here. I think there's a chance Purdue could play very slow, very deliberate, which I do think would be more usage for Braden Smith and TKR, but I just don't really like the idea of a slow game against a Houston team that's already really good and really slow. Houston ranks 10th in offensive efficiency, 1st in the nation in defensive efficiency, and 360th in tempo. So this is just going to be a slow game where I think Purdue struggles to score. Trey Kaufman-Renn has been great in the NCAA tournament so far, just outstanding. But he's a low post big, and when he has good matchups, he can eat. When he doesn't have good matchups, he ain't going to be eating a whole lot. And I just don't really see this as a good matchup for him going up against Robert and Tugler down low. So he's probably going to be a pass for me. Braden Smith, $9,400. I think that this is probably a better matchup for Braden Smith than it is for TKR. But still, like, we're talking Houston. They're good defenders. And Braden Smith is kind of dependent on peripheral stats for his fantasy scoring as well. But he's not going to get a whole lot of them against Houston's really slow pace and Purdue trying to slow the pace down. So it's just hard to feel comfortable at clicking either of those guys over $9,000 on DraftKings. You know, their third highest priced player is Fletcher Lawyer at $4,800. This might be a guy you could play because he's such a good shooter that if he just gets you 4 or 5 threes, like, you'll be content with that, right? So it's kind of what he did against McNeese, was 3 for 10 from 3, also had 5 assists. So he had 26 DraftKings points. I could see myself playing Fletcher Lawyer and just hoping and praying that he catches fire. After that, Camden Heide was really good against High Point. We got on and kind of advocated for him playing more against McNeese. Didn't happen. Only 7 DraftKings points in that game. Their backup guards like Harris and Cox, just Colvin, First, they're starting power forward, Like, I'm not gonna be playing a lot of Purdue, y'all. On the Houston side, they're interesting because you got Purdue. They're 341st in the nation in two-point field goal defense, right? But Houston is a team that they're so weird offensively, man. Like, they are so reliant on difficult shots. They're 296th in the nation in three-point rate, but they're first in the nation in three-point percent. So in other words, when they're taking threes, they're making them because they're wide open. And they're 272nd in two-point field goal percent. What that says is basically they are creating a lot of shots in their offense that are mid-range, off-the-dribble pull-ups for guards or post-up shots for bigs, both of which are analytically 2 of the worst shots that you can take in basketball. And when teams actually start trying to stop it and they kick the ball out to a three-point shooter, they make them. So I don't know what's going to happen here. Like, this is just such a weird game because of the fact that Houston is so poor at two-point offense, but yet Purdue is so poor at two-point defense, but yet they take so many of them. So like this just has a recipe for me for Houston scoring a lot of points and Purdue not providing a lot of resistance. So who's going to be scoring those points for Houston? Well, a lot of them are going to be scored by LJ Cryer, who's a guy that I've been critical of playing on DraftKings all season long because he is primarily just a scorer. But you're getting him against a bad defense in Purdue, and he's actually picking up his peripheral stats a little bit in the NCAA tournament. He's had 5 rebounds plus assists in both games, which is not bad. And he's hitting a lot of threes, and that gets you that extra bonus on DraftKings. So I don't mind the idea of LJ Cryer at $7,600 with how he's been playing lately. The guy I would be more likely to play among the Houston guards is Milos Uzan, who is a peripheral stat guy. And I know I said Purdue might slow this game down, but if Houston's scoring at will, a lot of assists are going to come from Uzan at $6,700. And then Emmanuel Sharp is kind of like a light profile of LJ Cryer. He's very scoring dependent, and he doesn't give you a whole lot of peripheral stats at all. And he's just not as good of a scorer as LJ Cryer, so I'd rather just play LJ Cryer. Malik Wilson and Terrence Arsenault are the guards off the bench. I don't think they're going to play enough in this one to matter. Basically, they're priced up because in the blowout wins that Houston has had recently, they played a lot of minutes and they were really good, and they're not going to get those minutes if the game's not a blowout. Now for the bigs for Houston. Juwan Roberts is their favorite low post big against Gonzaga. He took 18 2-point shots. And in that game, he had 18, 8, and 5. I think this could be another big game for Juwan Roberts because Purdue's 2-point defense is just not good. They have no rim protection. They're not great defending the post. I think this could really be a good game for Roberts. And I think that $7,000 is a very reasonable price tag to pay for him. This slate to me really lends itself to a balanced type of build. And he's a guy that could really fit into that profile. Joseph Tugler is their second big. I don't like his profile as much as Roberts because he doesn't play as many minutes. He's a better rebounder, but he doesn't take as many shots. So you would need Roberts foul trouble, in my opinion, for Tugler to really get there at $6,100. To me, that's a tough ask for his profile. And then Javier Francis is their backup big. He will play in relief of both of the other bigs, Tugler and Roberts. They're all three about the same size. They all run about 6'8", and they're all pretty sturdy. Francis is $4,000. He's going to play about 15 to 20 minutes. You could get a good game out of him. I don't think it's likely. Among the Houston bigs, I would not recommend playing more than one of them in the same lineup, and Roberts would be the guy that I would be recommending. All right, y'all, that is going to do it for this Friday night Sweet 16 slate. Hopefully we gave you guys all the information you need in order to build some winning DraftKings lineups or player props or bets or parlays for this slate. And if this video helps you in any way, please hit the like button on YouTube. Please subscribe to the channel if you have not already. We're closing in on 1,000. We're about 50 away. The goal is to hit that before the tournament ends. We can only do that with your help. And we're going to have a ton of content continuing to come your way for the rest of this tournament, as well as all the action throughout college basketball, because we've still got NIT games going on. And we've got the college basketball crown starting next week, which if DraftKings offers contests, we'll be here. So make sure you're subscribed for that. All right. But that's going to do it for this episode, y'all. Like I said earlier, this is a great weekend in college basketball. Just great games abound. The 4 Friday night should be a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to it. If you can't tell by my general level of enthusiasm, then I don't know what to do. I'm really excited for these games. And to me, the storyline of these games, every single coach in action on Friday night has something to prove. Every single one of them. If you're Bruce Pearl or Kelvin Sampson, it's, hey, can you get this program that was nothing before you got there to the mountaintop? If you're Tom Izzo, do you still have it? If you're Dusty May or Matt Painter, was that one run a fluke? If you're Rick Barnes, can you get Tennessee to a Final Four? If you're Mark Pope, can you be the man at Kentucky? There's just so many coaching storylines and just so many just interesting layers in these games. I can't wait to watch them, and I hope you guys feel the same way. And I hope that it's a fun DraftKings slate, because we're looking at the Alabama BYU game right now. Mark Sears is absolutely flamethrower it. So if you did not have Mark Sears tonight, I feel bad for you. But anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for the Friday night slate. Like I said, we're going to be back tomorrow talking for the Saturday Elite 8 slate, so make sure you are here for that. Best of luck to you guys on the Friday night DraftKings slate. Thank you guys for watching the ways to this point, and I will see you guys next time.